Hello? Rescue hooks to rescue, Mayday! Get ahead, West. Fast, Mayday, what's your location? Get the panel out of here, hurry up! We need radio silence, baby. Water in that 2.5 inch line. 48 inch water in a 2.5 inch line. To the rope, to the rope. 35 in the rear, 35 in the rear.
Welcome to the Emergency Traffic Podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Emergency Traffic Podcast, where we review firefighter line of duty deaths to learn more about these tragic incidents and potentially prevent them from recurring. I'm Paul, and I've got my two guest hosts with me today, Denis and Dennis. How are you, Denis?
G'day, I'm good. Thank you very much. We keep getting more winter from you. Appreciate that. Stop now.
Oh, we like to send it east. Yeah, we got no snow here, but we're supposed to get some Tuesday.
Yeah, you're so generous.
I know, you've got it all. I know, we want to share the wealth, just like equalization payments.
Yeah. There's no such thing, by the way. That's a boondoggle, but never mind.
Boondoggle.
We're getting an old-fashioned winter is what we're getting.
Good for somebody. We're going to get ours yet. We've about a 3-week reprieve from winter here in Alberta, but it'll come back, I'm sure. Dennis, how are you today? Your first day off in 7 days. You've been teaching like a crazy man.
That's been good. 110% ready to rock and roll here, Paul. Another episode. Woo!
Okay.
That's what he's getting.
Yeah, I know. I want what he takes every day. Yep, because it's always the same. 110%. Yep. Oh, before we get into the episode, we usually look at a couple of current events, and so this one. Okay, some current events, as we usually talk about. In Connecticut, the city of Norwich repossessed fire trucks and closed a station. It was the Yantic Fire Company. It was closed down in an effort to unify, perhaps regionalize the fire service, a trend that is growing across North America, but often, with resistance because it takes away the identity of the local station and the people and stuff like that. So it's really hard to improve regional services and cost and efficient response, but yet not alienate the volunteers or the people that have been putting their hearts into it for years. Right, Dennis? You know all about that.
There's the move to regionalize things, but at the same token, you still want the local volunteer firefighters to have some pride. They've done a lot of fundraising over the years, and there's a lot of ownership in their station and what they've got. Right or wrong, it is what it is. But I see that when they went to go repossess the fire apparatus, they actually had to use a police escort to go and get those trucks. I was just seeing that.
Yeah, it can be a difficult situation for sure. Rural Metro took over. That's the private fire contractor company that's operating in the States mainly, although there's some here in Canada too, although not Rural Metro, but other companies. Many of the airports in Canada are run by private corporations for the fire rescue services. Anyway, they've taken over services in South Tucson, Arizona on February 1st. It's a very small municipality. It's only 1 square mile municipality in the Tucson area. They were running a part-time on-call service, but they were really struggling with getting an adequate coverage and people to respond and stuff like that. So Rural Metro took over February 1st with a staff of 4, 24/7 in the station. So it's just something that we may see more of. The municipality says in an effort to save costs and provide more consistent response is why they did it. In Medina, New York, the city is considering reselling an aerial. They bought a brand new aerial and it's too high to fit in the station. It's often a problem if you have older stations and stuff like that. And therefore this aerial arrived and it won't fit in the station. The municipality is considering declaring the new aerial surplus and selling it and buying another one that will fit, possibly a used one, rather than building a new station. Obviously, the firefighters and everybody in the city, there's a lot of tension about this, and not sure which way they're going to go. But it can happen. It's not unheard of. Houston had a similar thing arise, big city of Houston, in September of 2025, when a new aerial wouldn't fit in the station that it was designated for. And because I'm old, I remember Saskatoon, Saskatchewan bought a pair of aerials from Tebow back in 1985. And when the aerials arrived, they had to modify two of the bays in the main station downtown to fit those trucks because they were also too high. So it does happen. Actually, Emergency One sent me to in Arizona, Los Alamos. They sent me to Los Alamos. They had a big order of trucks after the big wildfire that went through Los Alamos in the early 2000s. And so they wanted a company representative to go measure every station to make sure every truck would fit. And so they sent me down there. I was the closest guy, I guess. I flew down there to Phoenix. We drove out to Los Alamos, toured the base, measured all the fire stations, and I had to fill out a report saying they would all fit. I remember doing that. So make sure your truck will fit in the station that you've ordered.
So, Paul, back in the day, I mean, wouldn't that be a question when you're speccing out a truck as to what's the size of bay and door?
Yeah, but there can be.
There's more to the story. And the more to the story is the joys of being a fire chief. There was a project before council to build a new fire hall or to do modifications to the fire hall. And the fire truck was ordered under the basis that that would happen. And then somewhere along the line, the fire hall project got torpedoed, delayed, whatever the case may be. And so, of course, the truck won't fit. And the fact now they want to sell the truck suggests strongly to me that they don't want the truck anyways. It's all part of a much broader, let's not spend all this kind of money plan on the part of council. I think that's the backstory here.
Exactly. And I have a first-hand example of this. It's a great example. Back in the early 2000s, the city of Camrose was wanting to buy a new ladder truck, and they wanted to buy our ladder truck that I was selling, which was great. But I remember going for lunch with the fire chief and the mayor and some other dignitaries and stuff after we'd done some demonstrations. And the fire chief says, like, yep, definitely, that's a great truck. I want to buy it, but I can't order it yet because it won't fit in the station. And the mayor was there, and he said clearly, don't worry about it, Peter. Buy the truck. We will make it fit. And so they did actually house the aerial in temporary quarters in the city shop. They put a chain link fence around it in the city shop, and that was where the aerial sat for 2 or 3 years until they got their new station. Eventually they did, and they got their new station and put it in there. And that truck's still in service today. In fact, it's being replaced as we speak, I think. But, it does happen. But here the mayor and the fire chief were working, supporting each other. Obviously, in Medina, that may not have been the case.
Yeah. My guess is not.
I said they could just buy one of those temporary fire stations. They build them down in Lethbridge or something. They're selling them all over Canada. Oak Bay bought one. There's all kinds of them, and they could just put one of those up. But,
where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, and you had one more you wanted to talk about, Denny, about that fatality.
And this one talks back about an incident that we all know about, but we didn't have the details of unless you were in that department. It was about a firefighter in Connecticut who was he was a volunteer firefighter, and he was killed. He was a captain, I think. I might be wrong on that, but he was killed. But there was a hose connected to a fire engine or something or other, got caught by a passing motorist, which is a violation in most jurisdictions. Drove over the hose, got caught, and something happened. A piece of equipment fell off the truck and killed him. So that was all we knew at the time. It now turns out that what happened was the hose pulled on a intake valve attached. So one of those external intake valves, I think, attached to the side of the fire engine, pulled it off the truck, and the intake valve struck the firefighter. He was a 60-year-old gentleman by the name of Moreau, and killed him, Ray Moreau, and it killed him. So struck him. He died from trauma. So, but the message here, I think, is interesting because the OSHA issued a couple, no violations, but issued some recommendations to the Plainville Fire Department that they should have standard operating procedure guidelines which outline annual evaluation of apparatus operators. So that suggests that maybe something wasn't done the way OSHA thinks it should have been done. maybe where the hose was or how it was routed, or we don't know, or a failure to block the road. I don't know the answer to that. And also said that the fire department should establish training on situational awareness, and PPE and pump operations and hose deployment should be discussed on a regular basis. I think that anybody who goes to calls and drops hose on the road and then charges it or don't charge it, I think in this assumption here, the hose wasn't charged. Otherwise, it wouldn't have pulled that hard because it's so heavy. Um, I think has to realize that stuff like hose letting go or getting pulled or moved, because in the early stages where a lot of stuff's going on, that can happen. But what's more important is understanding the dynamics of what could happen. So, like when you charge a high vol hose and you're standing next to the valve on the side of the engine, for instance, where that hose curves and goes in, if something lets go there, you're going to be badly hurt if you're not standing on, in this case, the inside of the curve, if you happen to be standing on the outside of the curve. So understanding the physics and the risks to you as a firefighter when you're standing there, like if there's somebody's charging a 4-inch hose, would you stand over the hose as it runs between your legs on the road? Would you stand over a coupling where it runs? So, I mean, that seems obvious, but you got to think all of this through. And I think practice and training and some education is helpful. Not that it might have saved this gentleman, but I'm just saying that these are risks. These can happen. I've had a firefighter buddy who was almost killed when a 4-inch connection came off and struck him in the head. Why you wear your helmets, why you're careful. It's just, anyway, it's a lesson for all of us. An unfortunate accident. It's a shame somebody died because of it.
Yeah, let's honor him by watching out for this and paying attention when that hose is attached to the truck, and if it's charged or if another vehicle catches it, we have to watch out for these situations.
Yeah. Or even lying on the ground, right? I mean,
Yep.
Anyway.
Okay, moving into the episode. So we're going to Hollywood Hills, California. On Thursday, February 17th of 2011, a 61-year-old male career firefighter paramedic named Glenn Allen and 12 other career firefighter officers were injured when a large section of the first floor interior ceiling suddenly collapsed onto them while they were attempting to gain access to an attic fire. Unfortunately, Glenn Allen succumbed to his injuries the next day. The sources for this episode are taken from the NIOSH report F 2011-05 and also Rick DeGroot's report from Building Construction for the Fire Service's Facebook page. Obviously, the fire department we're talking about is most likely Los Angeles County, I think it was.
City,
Los Angeles City. Squad 51. No, that was county, right? Squad 51. Emergency, the TV show. Okay.
That was a TV show.
That was a TV show. I know. All right. But we all like it, or most of us do. Denny probably doesn't like it. The fire department had 106 stations with 3,588 uniformed members, serving a population of over 4 million people in an area of about 470 square miles. Due to economic constraints, the fire department used a modified coverage plan, which reduced staffing by 122 positions per shift. All department members worked a 24-hour duty shift for 3 out of 9 days, or an average of 56 hours per week. In 2010, just before this happened, the fire department responded to nearly 15,000 actual fire incidents, with 90% of the responses on scene within less than 3 minutes. So or 5 minutes. Good response time anyway. It's ironic that in 2025, similar lack of funding, staffing, etc., may have been a factor in the tragic Palisades fire last year. But anyway, the record's broken. It just keeps going over the same thing all the time. At the time of the incident, the fire department had 127 ambulances, 101 engines, 49 trucks, 15 brush apparatus, 4 foam tenders, 4 rehab air tenders, 2 fuel tenders, a heavy rescue, 5 marine boats, 2 emergency lighting units, 6 helicopters, and they had specialty units which consisted of swiftwater rescue teams, airport firefighting teams, hazardous material squads, bicycle medic teams, and urban search and rescue companies. All fire apparatus were maintained by the city's fleet maintenance division, with annual testing of fire apparatus and ambulances conducted by qualified vendors. They didn't do their own testing. That's a good move, by the way, because it forces you to do it correctly, maybe.
Plus, you got
All
third-party accountability, right? So it
exactly.
takes the
I remember,
politics out of it.
I remember going to Montreal after they had that ladder fail, and first question we asked is, "Who does your testing?" "Oh, well, we do." "And who does your repairs?" "Oh, we do." And they said, "Okay, well, see you later. You own it. Bye." All advanced life support ambulances were staffed by the fire department. There was very little information available on training and experience of the firefighter that was available at the time of the final report. So we have nothing on the training experience of firefighter Glenn Allen. The equipment and personnel initial dispatch assignment was 5 engines. 1 was mutual aid, 2 rescues, 2 trucks, emergency medical services, 5 ambulances with an on-duty EMS captain. No, I think it's ambulance was number 5 with an on-duty EMS captain, 2 battalion chiefs with a firefighter staff assistant. So they had fits, if you will, with the chief. 1 chief was mutual aid. Additional units were requested by Incident Command and on scene immediately following the collapse.
So I did some numbers on this because we're always interested in what the first alarm is. So of the 5 engines, including the mutual aid, 3 of the engines were equipped with 4 firefighters, and 2 of them were equipped with only 1 firefighter because they were part of these light forces, which were 2 trucks, an engine with a driver operator only, 1 person, and an aerial with it. So
Right.
they say they responded 5 engines on the first alarm, and not really. They responded 3 engines and 2 light forces. So that's not the same thing. Then they responded 2 rescues, each with 2 firefighters only. And they responded 2 trucks, each with 5 firefighters. So 2 of those trucks were part of those light forces. In fact, they are the light force. So you got a ladder with 5 and an engine with 1, and that's dispatched as a light force. And the emergency medical services guy, there was only 1 person on it. It was an EMS captain, and the 2 battalion chiefs. 1 had 2 firefighters on board, so the battalion plus his fit, and the mutual aid, it was only a single person. So all in all, it was a total of 32 on the first alarm.
Okay. Thanks. I tried to simplify it, but I didn't do a good enough job.
Do you want me to talk about the structure now that you're beating me up?
Sure.
You're my favorite cousin, Paul. So the address of this incident, for those who want to go and look at it on Google, and I think you should, because there are a lot of aspects to this location that could easily be considered part of how the response rolled out. Anyway, the address is 1546 View Site Drive in Northwest LA. So it's up in getting into the Hollywood Hills, but it's not in Hollywood Hills. And it's in the canyon areas, right? So this is where you get out of the plateau of the city and you get up, and there's a big spine of mountain, and you get all these fingers of ridges coming out, pointing south towards Los Angeles or west or whichever direction it is. You got all these canyons in between. So roads wind up through the canyons and down the ridges, and there's houses built hanging out all over the place, built on stilts, little tiny winding roads. And honestly, I don't know how you get any fire trucks up there, but they do, obviously. So anyway, that's my rant about accidents.
They got tillers. That's why. We got to support Doug here in our little rant.
You got tiller pumpers? I don't think so.
Yeah. You can have tiller pumpers. It's called a quiller.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. I don't think they make them anymore. Never mind. We're diverging.
Yeah, they make them. Yeah. Rancho Cucamonga.
Yeah. We're not talking four-wheel steer, although we're probably, never mind. Anyway, the fire occurred in a newly constructed and occupied as of February 2011. So, the fire happened just right after this, of a 3-story single-family dwelling located on a hillside. This is not your regular, this is a McMansion. The home had approximately 12,500 square feet divided amongst 3 floors. So what's that? 4,000 some per floor? And I think the first floor was the biggest floor. And that would be the top floor. Why do I say that? Because the first floor was located at street level, and the main entrance where the collapse occurred was really the top floor of the building. You drove up to this building on the street, it looked like a modern single-story building. It certainly was not. Anyway, the building was constructed of steel and had 2-inch by 6-inch stud framing with a 6-inch flat wood siding on the outside. So it was like, like board and batten sort of, but anyway, battens all over the outside. And of the remaining 2 floors, they were both below grade. and they were constructed from concrete, so poured concrete. However, I believe the bottom floor actually stood on stilts on the Charlie side because it was out over a canyon with a road below and more houses below it and a lot of brush. Anyway, the flat roof construction consisted of fiberglass reinforced membrane affixed to an insulation board. And this insulation board was fastened down on top of a 3/4-inch plywood roof deck. And it was mechanically fastened down, and it would have been taped too for water tightness, etc. So below that was a tapered 2-inch by 6-inch lumber was framed like a ceiling, like a roof joists, and that was framed below that 3/4-inch plywood deck, and it was tapered to provide a slope so water would drain off the roof slightly. So it wouldn't have been a lot, not really that noticeable. Below this, the second layer of the roof was also constructed with 3/4-inch plywood, which was fastened beneath the tapering 2 by 6-inch lumber that we talked about. So you got a sandwich basically. And this was sitting on top of 2-inch by 12-inch rafters, which held all of that up. So the first floor below that was a drop ceiling comprised of a large unsupported open space, no columns, in other words. And this space was constructed from nailed 2-inch by 12-inch rafters that ran in the north-south direction, the narrow way, in other words. And hanging down from the rafters were 2-inch by 4-inch wood hangers hanging vertically attached. So, like a suspended ceiling where you'd have wires hanging down the suspended ceiling. In this case, it was 2x4s, and they're fastened in there to provide a much more rigid structure. And each of these lengths of 2x4 hangers were about 26 inches in length, so about 2 feet. So you can see there's going to be a 2-foot space there. And they were attached to the rafters in the east and west, about every 3 feet or so, and then every 5 feet in the north-south direction. So they're on a grid holding up below this a 2x4-inch structure that was nailed to the bottom of the hangers, and this created the framework for the ceiling that you would actually see. So then below that, there's boards. 2x4 boards are then nailed to the bottom, and these boards ran in east-west, spanning the ceiling in the living room about 5 feet apart. And attached to the bottom of those boards were more 2x4-inch boards, about 16 inches apart, running in the opposite direction. So you've got 2 layers of 2x4 boards, some running one way, some running the other way. They're all hanging on these 2x4 hangers, which are hanging from this double sandwiched roof deck above it, all wood.
Talk about a complex ceiling. Like, oh my gosh.
Strong. Anyways, and then, of course, below that, you've got drywall that's on that 5/8-inch Type X code drywall attached to the bottom of the boards. So not regular drywall, 5/8 Type X. Tough stuff, fire resistant, used for fire separations like in walls, and rated, in other words.
Stairwells and garages.
Very heavy, very strong ceiling. And as we'll find out later, there's a raging fire in there, and the firefighters can't get through this drywall for a number of reasons. But anyway, the drop ceiling created an approximate 28-inch void space between the underside of the roof deck, not the top of the roof deck, because there's another foot there, and the ceiling drywall. And on top of the drywall, there's 6-inch R23 insulation. And inside of all of that, there's plastic sprinkler piping, electrical conduit, and air conditioning ductwork is all in this 28-inch space. So yes, this building is sprinklered. However, like most buildings, it's only sprinklered in the occupied spaces, not in the construction spaces. So the living room also contained a recessed fireplace. There was actually several of them in the building, but in the living room, there was a recessed fireplace. And this fireplace is not your regular fireplace. It measured 18 feet wide by 2 feet deep by 18 inches in height. So this is like a pig roasting barbecue is what it looks like. And this is a real fireplace, not one that's got LED lights in it in some real estate office. That's not what this is. Anyway, the fireplace enclosure was constructed of drywall, backer board, and tile. The back wall was backer board covered with tile. We're telling you about the fireplace because the fireplace is where the fire started. The top and side walls were constructed of drywall, and the floor was constructed of backer board. Now, backer board is kind of a cement board, right? They use for backing tiles and so forth. It's non-combustible. That is, it's thin like drywall. So what you use to fasten the backer board to is extraordinarily important. If you fastened it to something like wood that's combustible and you use nails to fasten it, you've got a heat conduction directly into a combustible subframe, which they did have, by the way. So you're going to find out that this is all part and parcel of what the problem was. Within the fireplace enclosure was a gas burning appliance, in other words, burners. Within the floor of the fireplace, there were 2 stainless steel troughs. Because remember, we said this fireplace was, what did I say, 18 inches deep, something like that, 16 inches, something like that, I forget. And each of these troughs were 6 inches by 15 feet long. And inside them, there was 2 1/2-inch diameter pipes connected to blow-up boxes. So these are the boxes at the end where the gas and combustion air is mixed together. And so there's one on the north end of the fireplace and one on the south end. And I guess it blows the gas in towards the center. And that's your flame, right? So the pipes and troughs were covered with dark colored glass chips and lava rocks. Each of these fireplaces was 300,000 BTUs. Your normal gas-fired fireplace you'd put in your house, 25,000 to 50,000, 35,000. I have a 35,000. I got it turned down. I've had gas fireplaces in every house, and I never ever ran them anywhere as close to their maximum capacity. And we're talking a fraction of what this was capable of. Anyway, the fire was first observed by arriving units on the D exterior wall of the house, and it was blowing out in the area of where one of these control boxes were. Now, you can't see the control box from the outside. There's a grill for bringing in air, but that's where it was. So when you drive up to this house, there's a roadway that comes up directly in towards the alpha side of the house, and then it turns to the right, crosses in front of the alpha side of the house, and then there's a lane that comes off on your left and runs down the delta side of the house. That's your only access to this house. And when they arrived, they saw fire blowing out of partway down the wall on the side of this house. And the side of this house is, I don't know, 200 feet long, something like that.
Massive.
Anyway, yes. Above the fireplace, you'd expect there'd be a flue of some sorts, right? So above the fireplace was a void space. So it's open, like you can walk right into it, right? So it extended up into the ceiling area. And this void space measured approximately 2 feet deep by 20 feet wide. And because it's a flue, they constructed it of 2-inch by 4-inch sawn wood and then enclosed it in drywall.
Kind of like a stairway or something.
Yeah. Within the void space behind that, of course, there were 3 4-inch diameter sheet metal vent ducts above the fireplace that was connected to a single vent duct that appeared to lead through to the roof, and there's a vent cap on the roof. Remember, this is a 300,000 BTU fireplace, which is way more than most people's furnaces would be. Anyway, there was no observed draft or fire stops in any of this construction and up to the void space below the roof. Anyway, specifics of the gas fireplace were obtained later by investigative reports provided to NIOSH investigators from the city's district attorney. So a lot of these facts came out later. The firefighters did not know them at the time. The fireplaces within the home did not have a permit and were never inspected prior to use. In fact, you're going to find out if you go and Google this, that the owner had his inspection, had it cleared off, and then installed the fireplaces afterwards, and they weren't even rated to be interior fireplaces. So there was obviously lawsuits that came out of this.
You're spoiling the surprise. That comes later.
Is it? I forget. Is it in the story? Okay.
Anyway, so.
The home did contain a residential sprinkler system. According to information provided to NIOSH investigators and through interviews conducted, it appeared that none of the system's sprinkler heads activated during the incident. In other words, the fire was not in the sprinklered spaces. It was in the non-sprinklered spaces. However, the homeowner...
Speaking of non-sprinklered spaces, something we forgot on the current events was the hospital fire in Pennsylvania, which we'll have to cover maybe next time, but the fire caught in the attic and it burned the whole wing of the hospital down. That was spectacular.
Very serious fire.
No sprinklers in the attic.
Much better than hoped for result, really. So
Yes. Everybody lived.
Yeah. Anyway, however, the homeowner did awake to water flowing down the stairs from the first floor. they believe was coming from the sprinkler system. So the fire must have damaged the sprinkler piping.
Yep.
Interior firefighters, once they got inside, noted water coming from ceiling canister lights and running down the walls. So the piping let go up in this hidden ceiling area.
Yep.
It is believed that the plastic sprinkler pipes may have been exposed to fire damage once the fire spread into the attic area. So anyway, additional information and inspection of the type and span of the sprinkler system wasn't accessible. So there's no conversation about what standard the sprinklers met.
Yeah, they're thinking 13R residential, right?
Yeah, pretty big building for 13R, right?
But it's a residence. Yep.
Yeah. So whether the incident occurred during the night within a hillside single-family residential structure, temperatures outside was in the upper 40s, with a slight wind at 7 miles per hour from the south-southwest. So this wind would have impacted on the Charlie Delta corner, which is the opposite side of the building from where the fire occurred.
That's where that intake was, is on the Delta side.
So when you say upper 40s, Denny, that's only like 4 degrees Celsius.
Yeah, Fahrenheit, right? So that's...
so 40 degrees Fahrenheit, 40 degrees. So it was a little bit cooler. So they probably had the furnace or this huge fireplace just rolling, heating up this 12,000 square foot house, which is really more like a commercial structure.
Well, apparently they were getting the house ready for a photo shoot where they were going to do the models of Germany, and they had like Heidi Klum, and I shouldn't say names because I don't know for sure, but a bunch of celebrity people were going to be there or something in the house. The house, I don't even know, was properly occupied other than that. So I guess all of that didn't occur. So there was...
Probably not.
Anyway, I don't know.
So the investigation. So on February 16th, 2011, at 2320 hours, the victim's department, so Glenn's department and an initial mutual aid department, were dispatched to a structure fire, and it was reported as a 3-story single-family dwelling located on a hillside. So at 9 minutes later, Engine 41 arrived on scene and positioned the apparatus on the D side of the structure. Fire was visible on the D side exterior wall of the home, which was transmitted over the radio to incoming units as part of the initial size-up. Engine 41 also advised the incoming units that it was a 2-story structure. So note, from the A side of the structure, only a single-story home was visible, but 2 stories were visible from the Delta side or D side of the structure. However, the Bravo side, which could not be viewed or accessed due to the steep hillside, showed that the structure was actually 3 stories. So it established a water supply. Engine 41 laid a handline of 150 feet of 4-inch diameter supply hose to a hydrant that was located on the Alpha side of the structure across the street from the main entrance into the home. Engine 41 was able to quickly contain the exterior fire on the Delta side by using a 1-inch hose line from Engine 41. Engine 41 also placed a 20-foot extension ladder on the Delta side, giving them access to the home's patio area, which is on the Charlie side, and allowed them to place a 1.5-inch hose line with 200 feet of hose to the Charlie side. Denny, what do you got there?
It says here that they used a ladder to get to the Charlie side patio. Why did they do that? Well, because that was actually up an entire floor because the street drops away. and there was this concrete security wall, so you couldn't get into that. So they had to ladder up to the pool deck basically to get to the Charlie side. So it was like access is a nightmare to this property.
I thought you were going to comment on the 1-inch hose line to extinguish the exterior Delta side fire.
I was going to comment on that. I'm saving that one for later.
Okay.
I was thinking you were. Yeah. I thought that I saw that, and I'm like, no.
Giant house, visible fire. Let's pull a 1.5.
No, an inch.
One
inch.
One
inch. A red line.
Oh my gosh. So, anyways, a minute later, we had is that ladder 27, Paul? LF 27.
Light Force 27. Which is truck 27 and engine 227.
And again, so you got only one person in each of those trucks?
So one person drives the engine, and the 3 other guys are in the truck. 5 other guys are in the truck, and so they always go everywhere together. It's a concept that they use there. So that way they have, instead of buying a Quint aerial, because they have tillers, so they have the aerial, and then they send a pump along to chase it, basically.
Wow. Okay, and then mutual aid number 7, Rescue 41 arrived on scene and positioned their apparatus on the opposite side of the structure. The captain of 27 was the initial incident commander until Battalion 18 arrived on scene 1 minute later and took over as the IC. The IC, the incident commander, remained in his vehicle, which was positioned behind Engine 7, which reported that they saw a glow of the fire emanating from the roof. Engine 7 was immediately met by the homeowner, who advised them that he heard water flowing inside the structure and then he needed someone to turn the water off because it was collecting on the floor below. So again, that first floor was below the street level there is what he was talking about. So they must have been occupied. Danny, you thought there was nobody in there, but if the homeowner was there, this is the
Minimally
middle of the night.
occupied. Yeah.
Yeah, so it must have been there because he came out to meet the firefighters, right? And so it was collecting on the floor below. And so members of Engine 7 reported there was little to no smoke within the structure, and it did not appear that the fire sprinklers had activated, but there was water flowing from light fixtures in the Charlie Delta corner and from drywall in some areas. So it's noted that it was later confirmed by interior crews that the fire sprinkler heads neither activated nor discharged any water at all.
I think it's important to understand that it probably was a residential sprinkler system. So it's not like a commercial system where you've got a water flow alarm on the exterior of the building, where you've got a place that you can hook up and pump into. It's got none of those things, right? So it's essentially fed off the domestic water system. So if the domestic water system comes in off the street, goes to your toilet, goes to your sink, goes to the sprinkler system. So it's, you don't really have an understanding, I don't think, of exactly whether you got sprinkler flow or not. And maybe it was ruptured water piping. Who knows, right?
Well, with no alarms to indicate a sprinkler had been activated, right? Because the only way they knew is the water is flowing down the stairs.
Yeah, must be coming from somewhere.
It's got to be. Engine 41 advised the incident commander that they would give an interior size up after they'd breached several sliding glass doors and advanced their 1.5-inch hose line into the first floor of the structure.
So that's on the pool deck. They're doing that, right?
Yeah, because they've come around. They've laddered. They come around, and
Charlie side pool deck.
Yeah, because all those sliding doors would be facing the pool. Yeah. And the members from the light engine 27, the task force 27, Paul?
Truck 27.
Truck 27 positioned 2 additional ladders. At least this time they got a 20-foot and a 24-foot straight ladder on the delta side of the structure that actually gave them access to the roof. So one member from Truck 27 assisted Engine 41, while the captain of Truck 27 and the remaining 3 members became the initial roof crew.
5 minutes after arrival, Engine 41 reported that the Delta side exterior fire was out on the wall, but it appeared that the fire had extended to the attic. Truck 27 roof crew observed fire coming from a roof ventilator and immediately began cutting a ventilation hole and observed large amounts of fire under them within the attic space. Engine 97 also arrived on scene and was ordered by the incident commander to back up the interior fire attack with a second hose line and assist with forcible entry. Engine 97, with 4 members, including Glenn Allen, grabbed the 1.75-inch hose line from Engine 227 and a thermal imaging camera and pike poles before entering the structure at street level.
So, Paul, I wonder, the roof crew cut the roof, which was this composite insulated 3/4-inch plywood, and then they observed fire below them. But there was a second 3/4-inch sheathing on the bottom of the main roof structure. I wonder if they were observing fire above that or below that. Did they actually? How do you cut that second 3/4-inch that's down 12, or I forget what the size of those structures were, but they're big pieces of wood down below that, right? So they would have to cut through 3/4-inch and then cut down through another 3/4-inch. So getting the roof open was probably a fair challenge.
Stay tuned.
Do we know if they got the full roof open or just what they thought was the roof that was opened?
That's kind of what I was thinking.
The outside layer of the roof. Geez, you guys are technical.
But that's important because a lot of smoke, right? And what can you see?
And LA typically they open the roof up like right away. That's their modus operandi pretty well right away. Ventilate. So
and what time of the day was this call?
Evening.
In the dark.
10:30.
In the dark.
In the living room, area, the Charlie Delta corner, which is where the wind was coming from, interior crews, and they went in through those Charlie doors, right, on the Charlie
Yep.
side, on the balcony.
Yep.
Interior crews discovered fire within the interior walls on the Delta side, behind and above a recessed gas fireplace, immense gas fireplace, and a drop ceiling, the collapse area, in a void space. At some point, water was no longer observed coming from the walls or light fixtures. Note, the sprinkler system was turned off by the homeowner after units arrived on scene.
What?
So stay tuned.
Here, I'll just go ahead and turn off the sprinklers for you.
You got to read the whole thing. 2 minutes later, the incident commander assigned Rescue 97 and Engine 97 to assist with interior fire attack. Mutual Aid Engine 7 positioned a second 1.75-inch hose line through the front door into the first floor to assist with fire attack. Interior crews continued to work on opening up walls and attempting to pull the ceiling within the living room in the Charlie Delta corner. A note here is that the drop ceiling was approximately 11 feet above the firefighters, in areas causing much difficulty in reaching and pulling it with 6-foot pike poles. So the problem was, of course, they had to stand on stuff and do everything they could to reach up there.
This is why the back of the aerial has all these long pike poles that you laugh at and say, what are those there for?
Exactly, the 12-footer. And it's hard to get it inside the house. Longer pike poles and ladders had to be retrieved from the trucks in order to reach the ceiling. Once longer pike poles were retrieved and put into use, the firefighters still had difficulty pulling the ceilings due to the thickness of the drywall. Denis, you explained to us before that it was 5/8 thick X-rated, so fire-rated drywall, which is very difficult to move, to punch through.
On 2x4 supports.
Right. The firefighter stated to NIOSH investigators that it took several punches just to poke a hole through the drywall, only to remove small pieces of drywall at a time. This process continued for the next 30 minutes until the ceiling collapse occurred. Truck 27 continued roof operations directly over where the interior crews were working with their hose lines. Conditions worsened, causing the roof operations crew to go on air before extending their roof cuts because they had lots of fire and smoke coming out the roof. Chainsaws were bogging down by the heavy, thick smoke and the extent that the air cleaners on the saws had to be removed to let them run. The roof structure proved to be troublesome and time-consuming to ventilate due to many layers associated with its construction. When areas of the roof were opened, heavy fire was observed in the exposed attic space. Took charge of Division 13 minutes after arrival, Mutual Aid Battalion Chief 1 arrived on scene and took charge of Division Alpha operations after speaking with the incident commander and observing the exterior of the structure. Mutual Aid Battalion Chief met with the officers of Engine 41, Engine 97, and Mutual Aid Engine 7 to get an update on their operation. At this time, the walls and small areas of the ceiling were opened, allowing firefighters to spray water on the fire inside those areas. This information was passed on to the IC. Also, Engine 41 advised the IC that the structure was actually a 3-story structure, first floor at street level, and 2 additional subterranean floors. Personnel were requested from the IC to handle salvage operations. The IC directed Light Force 78 upon their arrival, which was Engine 78 and Truck 278, to assist with the salvage operations and any additional interior operations. Light Force 78 copied the IC's transmission. 18 minutes after arrival, Truck 27 requested an additional truck company to assist them on the roof to handle the Alpha Bravo corner. Truck 27 was still having difficulty knocking down the fire and wanted to make sure that it did not spread. 4 members from Light Force 78 were assigned to assist with roof operations, while remaining members remained assigned to interior operations. They used ladders that were positioned at the Alpha Bravo corner to access the roof and began their roof operations in that area. A minute later, the IC requested Conditions, Actions, and Needs report, or a CAN report, from Truck 27. Truck 27 advised command that they still had trouble expanding their roof hole and getting water into the fire. It also appeared to them that the fire was continuing to move under them toward the Charlie Delta corner. They had not noticed any obvious changes in the conditions from interior suppression operations. And I've had that before where you open up a hole and the fire will actually go towards the wind, where the air is coming from.
Yeah. I wonder, they have this conversation about the Alpha Bravo corner. The Alpha Bravo corner is over the garage. It's like a long, long distance from where the fire was noted and burning in the living room. I wonder what operations they were doing in the Alpha Bravo corner.
I think they're
Did
thinking
the,
trench cut. That's probably what they were thinking.
but Alpha
Potentially.
Bravo's nowhere's close. I wonder if they
No,
meant Alpha Bravo of the living room, not Alpha Bravo of the structure.
maybe, yeah.
Because our listeners may be wondering if you, especially if you look at a top view of this house, it's a big house, like the Alpha
Yeah,
Bravo corners, nowhere close to where this fire is.
yeah, it's a
So,
couple hundred
no.
feet away.
Yeah.
22 minutes after arrival, the Mutual Aid Battalion Chief 1 confirmed that the fire in the Charlie Delta wall was contained, and the fire was only in the attic space now. Several interior crew members requested additional personnel from command to assist with pulling down the ceiling, but none were initially available until the incident commander called for an additional task force 3 minutes later. So they ran out of guys. Even though they had 33 guys or something on arrival, they'd run out of people.
But more than that, I mean, this very hilly, very windy, very narrow streets. So everybody's parked like nose to tail, right? So
Yep.
you needed a tool, like they said they needed longer pike poles. That was a walk, man.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like everything wasn't right in front of the structure. Some of it was, down the street.
Exactly, down on the corner.
So that burns up manpower.
28 minutes after arrival, Interior Operations advised Truck 27 that interior conditions were better and wanted to know how the roof operation was coming and where they saw fire. Radio transmissions continued for the next 5 minutes between interior operations and roof operations on how to contain the fire, which was now in the attic. Truck 27 crew had to exit the roof to change bottles and advised interior operations to speak with members of Truck 78 to get a better idea of how the fire was moving. So as they were down on the ground getting a new bottle.
Keeping in mind those patio doors are wide open, eh? And the
Right.
wind is right
Yep.
on them.
Exactly.
It's coming right into the living room.
Exactly, which is why the fire was going that way in the attic.
33 minutes after arrival, a large section of the drop ceiling fell onto the interior crews while they were attempting to pull the drywall down for the ceiling. So they're up there pulling on the drywall. They got a fire burning all that lumber that's up in there. And, the fire's weakening everything, and they're pulling on it, and it's insulated, and it's wet because the sprinkler systems are leaking, and they're putting water up there. There's a lot of weight, and down she comes. So then there was emergency traffic from several interior fire department members was immediately initiated. The ceiling came down as a single piece that included drywall, water saturated insulation, lumber, and other structural materials. Many firefighters were struck by and or buried by the debris. Most were able to self-extricate, but 3 interior members, including firefighter Glenn Allen, required extensive extrication through the use of saws. Remember, it's all timber. The engineer from Engine 227 quickly exited the structure because he had been inside and sounded the evacuation horn on Engine 227. Engine 61, who had just arrived on the scene, was assigned as the rapid intervention crew. So they're just assigning a RIC right now. They had to walk up the hill from where they had positioned their apparatus. As I already mentioned, access was poor, delaying their readiness to operate as RIC. For the next several minutes, numerous transmissions occurred between the 3 radio channels regarding the collapse, accounting for personnel, and requesting resources. The officer of Light Force 27 instructed members from his crew from Truck 27 to grab saws and enter the building to assist with search, rescue, and extrication efforts. This officer also advised command over the radio what he was doing. 38 minutes after arrival, the role of safety officer was assigned to Battalion Chief 11, who had just arrived on the scene. The Personnel Accountability Report quickly determined that firefighter Glenn Allen was missing and likely within the debris pile. 8 minutes after the collapse, firefighter Glenn Allen was discovered under a large section of the ceiling and appeared motionless. Firefighter Allen was wearing his self-contained breathing apparatus, and his facepiece was on his face. But firefighter Allen's upper body was pressed forward against his knees when he was discovered. So if you're held in a position like that, particularly a 61-year-old man, you've got a risk of positional asphyxia, right? That's a very bad position to be in. Anyway, firefighters quickly removed firefighter Allen from the debris pile, removed his face piece, and found him unresponsive and not breathing. Advanced life support was immediately started on the scene and was continued while he was transported to a local hospital. Unfortunately, he died the next day.
So, for fire origin and cause and behavior, local fire investigators believe that the fire originated in the void space below the first floor fireplace enclosure. So, those are underneath that huge fireplace there that was 18 feet long, and it was adjacent to the blowout and the control box assembly. Fire then traveled upward in the void space above the fireplace to the bottom side of the roof before traveling horizontally into the drop ceiling space above the living room. There were no fire stops installed at this time. When the gas burning fireplace was installed, the manufacturer's instructions and building codes were not followed, permits were not obtained, and the fireplaces were never inspected by local building officials.
Cause of death and injuries. According to the coroner's report, death was due to sequelae of anorexic encephalopathy due to or as a consequence of status post-cardiorespiratory arrest following compression and restriction of the chest. In other words, he had brain death, which followed a cardiac arrest, which was due to his injuries. That's what that means.
Due to his position that he was
Yeah.
caught in.
Yeah, and we don't know. He might have had a concussion too, or he probably had chest compression, which decreased breathing, which led to a heart attack, which then led to brain death. Basically, I wouldn't want to be in that position. He was 61-year-old. Also, I'm actually surprised he's still in the job. Most career contracts.
Yeah, usually 60 is about the number, but
yeah, there may be a history behind that in Los Angeles. Negotiations. I don't know. But it struck me as odd when I first saw that. But anyways, 12 individuals, firefighters, operators, engineers, and captains also were injured. So there were a number of close calls here as a result of the interior ceiling collapse. These injuries included sprains, strains, back, neck, and extremities, contusions, back and neck, fractures of the ankle, one guy, cervical spine injury. So that's your lower.
Nope, that's your neck.
Cervical
Cervical is your neck.
Thank you. Yeah, cervical. I was thinking coccyx there, but cervical spine injuries and a concussion. So, yeah, that was probably a pile of weight that came down and a pile of guys underneath of it. And only one guy died. That's actually surprising when you think about it. A lot of potential there.
For sure. Yeah. No. So, and I pulled up that tip from FDNY, which is going to talk about this too. We'll do that at the end. The recommendations. So recommendation number 1, the fire department should be aware of potential hazards associated with ceiling and roof structural elements that have been exposed to fire or other factors, such as water, for an extended period of time, and acknowledge the potential for a collapse within the structure. So we're not talking a collapse outside. You need to be aware of a collapse within the structure. And I've seen in a residential home fire even the whole ceiling come down because one big piece of drywall goes and a whole bunch goes if they're weakened by firefighting efforts or whatever.
Yeah. And people have been killed too by non-full collapses, just a one-side collapse, and it just comes down and slaps you. And there's a lot of weight there. You don't realize how much weight there is there. It's a lot.
The discussion about this is during fire operations, 2 rules exist about structural collapse. The potential for structural failure always exists during and after a fire. 2, a collapse danger zone must be established. Buildings or structures within a building can collapse due to the structural damage directly caused by the fire, or activities of firefighting operations, pulling ceilings, roof ventilation, water application. At this fire, crews were operating under a large area of ceiling space. The fact that this large area was not supported by any vertical walls put it at high risk for a large area collapse. During the incident, the drop ceiling posed an immediate threat to anyone working below it due to its structural support system being deteriorated by fire. The constructed weight of the drop ceiling, the effects of fire suppression, which included the application of water from hose lines and the leaking sprinkler system, and forces applied by firefighters using pipe poles to pull the ceiling downwards while attempting to remove drywall from the drop ceiling to get at the fire. All of these factors together potentially set forth a sequence of events that led to the collapse of the drop ceiling. Maintaining situational awareness throughout a fire incident is paramount, particularly the timeline since arrival and on scene and the effects of fire on structural integrity. Situational awareness is a highly critical aspect of human decision-making from an individual's perception and includes understanding what is happening around you, projecting a future situation at events, comprehending information and its relevance, and being realistic.
So if you're the guy on the pike pole and you're the guy with the nozzle, how how wide is your viewpoint on the structural soundness of the chimney? You're
Yep.
tunneled in. There's smoke. You're packed up. There's a lot of guys, noise, shit going
Trying to
on.
see.
You're
Yep.
looking at what you're trying to do. It begs the question as to why there was not an interior command and or safety officer standing there
Yes.
specifically for the purposes of understanding the risk that was at
Definitely
this
need an
particular site.
interior. It should have been a division or a group, and they should have had a supervisor and or a safety assistant. Yep.
Sure. Recommendation number 2, fire department should familiarize and train personnel on unique structures within their jurisdictions. So, for example, hazards associated with hillside construction, building design, and modern interior construction. So, a fire department's familiarity with types of construction in their community is an important tool in safely fighting fires. Every structure, commercial or residential, has its own unique features, and fire departments cannot rely solely on the last fire incident they participated in to provide them with a plan that will work for them at the next fire incident. This newer style of home had an open floor plan for an aesthetic appeal. The ceilings were vaulted in areas with drop ceilings constructed of high quality and heavy grade materials, which posed obvious hazards to the firefighters in this incident. For example, trying to reach ceilings, opening the ceilings and the walls and all these void spaces, as well as hidden hazards. For example, the damage to the ceiling supports, water absorbed from the installation and the construction type. So these higher quality and heavier grade materials were used to construct the drop ceiling as if it were a single system. When it became exposed to fire and other fireground activities eventually gave way, collapsing into the area where the interior crews were working. This occurrence was not expected and should be evaluated on a lessons learned approach. Fire departments cannot rely on the structure to not collapse and should constantly be evaluating their fireground strategy and tactics by observing potential indicators of collapse. The first one being, the time exposed to the fire, the construction type, noises, and cracks.
Yeah, and
Know
I mean,
your
if you
hood.
had a raging fire on the roof, it was burning away the structural members. Had this been a commercial building, that might not have been wood construction, but it's a private residence, so all that support system was wood and combustible and wet.
This wouldn't have been the only home built like that. I
Probably
mean,
not.
you do a
No,
little Google Street View walk around the neighborhood. There's a lot of them that look like this.
they do. I mean, it's that main street is, the first floor is right on the street level where they're parking, and there's one or two subterranean floors below that. That's pretty unique
They
for
may
us,
not be able to build up because of obscuring people's view.
you betcha. So they got to build down,
Yep.
and that's a challenge in itself, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you own a piece of property and it drops off at a 30, 40 degree angle, I mean, the only way you're going to build on it is by building down. You're
Yeah.
not, there's really no building up, right? So,
Yeah, you
but
can't fill it.
it's the size. I mean, I got a vaulted ceiling in my house, and my main area, my room is probably 1,000 square feet, and it's all vaulted. It's all 13-foot ceilings. I mean, and that's not unusual, particularly these days, right? So that's a risk, right? You don't notice there's a big fire. You don't see the smoke too much. Everything stratifies above your head. In many ways, it's a lot like a commercial fire.
Yep. Exactly, because of the size of the building.
Anyway, recommendation
Recommendation
3. Yeah. Recommendation 3. Homeowners, contractors, and governing municipalities, federal, state, regional, local, whatever it may be in your particular situation, should ensure compliance with current building and fire codes found within their jurisdiction. So the homeowners and contractors should always consult with the manufacturer and understand manufacturer requirements before installing any type of appliance, the fireplaces in this case. They must also follow approved building plans and codes, obtain appropriate permits, and verify with the locality on whether an inspection is required by code officials. Gas inspection, standards associated inspection, the building code officials, all that kind of stuff, and an occupancy permit. And usually, in some jurisdictions, there's even a fire department walkthrough in some cases if the building is falls within. I won't get into the details, but falls within their purview. So during this incident, the fireplace installed in the area of fire origin. In fact, there was more than one of these fireplaces in this house. There's only the one that caught fire. In the area of fire origin, did not follow appropriate manufacturer's installation requirements, didn't follow local building codes, and didn't receive a permit and was not inspected by the local building code officials. In fact, they were installed after the building code officials had been in the house. I think if you look further into the lawsuit that came out of this, some of the allegations.
We cover that.
Yeah.
So
Do we? I wasn't sure.
Yep.
Okay.
Recommendation number 4, fire department should ensure that separate incident safety officer, independent from the incident commander, is appointed at each structure fire with the initial dispatch. According to NFPA, the discussion 1561, Standard on Emergency Services Incident Management System, the incident commander shall have overall authority for management of the incident. The incident commander shall ensure that adequate safety measures are in place. This shall include overall responsibility for safety and health of all personnel and for other persons operating within the incident management system. While the incident commander is in overall command at the scene, certain functions must be delegated to ensure adequate scene management is accomplished. According to NFPA 1500, which is Standard on Occupational Health and Safety, incidents escalate in size and complexity. The incident commander shall divide the incident into tactical level management units and assign incident safety officer to assess the incident scene for hazards and potential hazards. The use of an ISO at this incident could have assisted in determining potential collapse within the home, readying personnel for RIC operations, and providing the IC with a set of mobile eyes while walking around the fireground.
Recommendation number 5, fire department should ensure that a rapid intervention crew, or RIC, is available and ready to be deployed and prepared to respond to firefighter emergencies. So a RIC, or a rapid intervention crew, should be designated and available to respond before interior attack operations begin and throughout the duration of the incident. The team should report to the incident commander and be available within the incident staging area. During this incident, there was no RIC and it was established prior to the ceiling collapse, and an arriving engine company was actually placed into this role once they got on scene. This crew had to navigate on foot up a hill in order to reach the incident scene. Denny, you'd already said this. There was fire trucks all the way down the street, very limited access. The more they were coming, like you said, nose to bumper the whole way. That would have been quite the hike for them to get there.
Also means they might not have taken all the equipment they needed with them, right?
Right.
That's quite a hike.
Well, they weren't hauling hoses with them, that's for sure.
No. So the discussion goes on to further say that fire departments should be aware of the 2010 International Association of Fire Chiefs Rules of Engagement of Structural Firefighting. These guidelines recommend that incident commands always have a rapid intervention crew in place at all working fires. I'll do recommendation 6. Yeah. And then you go on.
Hang on. It's a rule in BC. You must have RIC in place within 10 minutes or before sending a second crew inside. It's occupational health and safety law in British Columbia.
Just in BC?
In BC, yeah.
But just in BC.
I don't know of any other places that have that law. They actually train to it.
But whether there's a law or not doesn't really matter.
Right.
Whether you've written it into your SOPs or not doesn't really matter. That is best practices. And once it becomes recognized as best practices, and this dates back to 2010, the International Association of Fire Chiefs Rule of Engagements. Once that's known, and if ever push came to shove and you ended up in a courtroom, you'd have to explain why you didn't have to follow that. So those are the risks.
Now, technically, though, I mean, if you look at that, the 2010 International Association of Fire Chiefs Structural Standard on Rules of Engagement, this happened 1 year later. Yeah. So they only had a year, so maybe they didn't have a chance. I'm not justifying it.
We're talking one of the biggest fire departments in North America, ISO Class 1, all that kind of good stuff.
But what do we say about the fire service? 100 years of not change. So
that's like Montreal not having a Marine rescue chief for 9 years. Yeah. And two guys.
And those rules didn't come out of nowhere. They didn't have a meeting one day and design the rules.
No, exactly. They were there. Recommendation number 6, fire department should ensure that crew integrity is maintained at all times during an incident, especially during and following any emergency traffic or mayday. During this incident, personnel assigned themselves to interior RIC operations following the collapse without being assigned by the incident commander. This included firefighters arriving on scene and personnel originally assigned to operations at the incident.
So freelancing.
The problem, right, is something happens, so everybody runs to it. Well, hang on, maybe we need to put the fire out first, right? So you can't have that. But then if you don't have a RIC, then that's what people are going to do. In the absence of something in place, people are going to freelance. Number 7, fire department should consider all resource needs and SCBA air consumption rates in action planning during firefighting operations. The incident commander should maintain situational awareness of additional resource needs based on the building size and the fire conditions. How SCBA air consumption will affect resource needs. 3 minutes after arriving on scene, the battalion chief assuming command asked the interior company, Engine 41, if additional resources were needed. At 8 minutes later, the IC advised dispatch that they would handle the incident with the available resources on scene. 5 minutes after that, Engine 41 advised command that there was no change in fire conditions and they still had a fair amount of fire in the walls. Over the next 18 minutes leading up to the collapse, numerous reports were communicated to command that the fire was still active and moving south in the attic ceiling space. Truck 27 was also experiencing heavy smoke conditions from the roof, requiring firefighters to go on air. The chainsaws were bogged down by the smoke to the extent that they couldn't run them with the air cleaners on. They had to run them open. 23 minutes after arrival, command requested an additional task force, as all his companies from the initial dispatch were now committed. Light Force 20 and Engine 61 were dispatched, but none of these companies had arrived on scene before the time of collapse. Common accepted practice where all companies are committed and fire crews have not obtained fire control is to request an additional alarm that matches the resource of the first alarm. This allows command to have fresh crews available to replace those that are depleting their air supply and to keep uncommitted companies staged as backup. And that's my thing all the time. As a deputy fire chief, I would arrive on scene, I go, what's my backup? I have to have enough depth in my operation that I can handle an emergency or a problem. Hey, you got 13 or 18 minutes where fire conditions hasn't improved? You're losing the battle here. You need to do something different, obviously. And this is obvious, I assume, a very experienced chief officer.
One wonders what the role of the FIT was, because the battalion chief in command did have a fire technician with him.
Yep.
And he was in his vehicle. So what was the role of the FIT? So the incident commander was in his vehicle. He didn't seem to be aware or thinking of everything that was going on. What was the role of the FIT? They don't tell us. I mean, one of the roles in my mind of the FIT is to act as the person who says, "Hey, there's only so much time has passed," or "This is not happening." And what's the role of dispatch in keeping the IC like 10 minutes past, 20 minutes past? This benchmark has not been accomplished. Like a lot of it's operational practices of the fire department, I guess, and we really don't have any insight into that.
I have a word: complacency. Let's grab the booster line, put the fire out in the wall. Let's take an 1.5-inch line into the inside of a McMansion. It just goes on. Let's take a 6-foot pike pole. Come on, guys. It's a mansion. Nothing's going to be 6 feet away, right? It's complacency, in my opinion. That's just my personal opinion. What would I know?
Yeah.
I'm just a
Bad
dumb
outcome.
little fire chief. Number 8, fire department should ensure adequate staffing is available to respond to emergency incidents. NFPA 1710, the standard for organization and deployment of fire suppression operations, etc., contains recommended guidelines for minimum staffing of career fire departments. 1710 says that on-duty fire suppression personnel shall be comprised of the numbers necessary for firefighting performance relative to the expected firefighting conditions. These members shall be determined through task analysis that take the following factors into consideration: the life hazards, the provisions of safe and effective firefighting conditions for the firefighters, potential property loss, nature, configuration, hazards, internal protection of the properties involved, types of fireground tactics and evolutions employed as standard procedure, apparatus used, results of expected to be at the fire scene. The standard states that both engine and truck companies shall be staffed with minimum 4 on-duty personnel. The standard also states that companies shall be staffed with a minimum of 5 or 6 on-duty members in a jurisdiction where the tactical hazards, high hazard occupancies, high incident frequencies, geographical restrictions such as hillsides, and other pertinent factors identified by the authority having jurisdiction. During this incident, according to initial dispatch records, it took 8 minutes for the first arriving engine to get on scene, 18 minutes for the last unit to arrive. It took Battalion 18, the commander, 11 minutes to get to the scene on the initial dispatch. These units were not assigned to other incidents, and response times may have been affected due to the fire department's modified coverage plan. Remember, they had an engine with one person and a truck with 5. That still doesn't add up to 4 and 4. So the staffing was below minimums.
Well, there's definitely some challenges. I mean, this is a location where you look one street over, that's where the fire is, but it might take you 5 minutes to get there because of the way the roads wound up a gully, around a corner, back along a ridge line, around 3 more corners, and down another gully. So there was a risk.
Which would have forced for more staffing, more engines, right? That's Palisades burned because it was built to burn. They didn't
Yep.
have the resources, and
Totally.
the lots were full of stuff,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, we can go way back and unload the fire department. Like,
Yeah,
we should have never allowed them to develop those areas, period.
right. It's planning.
But
Yep.
being a fire chief for many, many years, I pretty soon recognized that I couldn't fix the past. I could
Yeah.
only plan for the future.
Exactly. So there's a FDNY tip in case we haven't mentioned these for a while. We used to do one per episode, and then I kind of dropped off of it to keep the episode short. But there's an FDNY publishes a tips book. All you got to do is Google FDNY tips, and it'll come up. And they do one every year, and it's tips arising from calls they had, and they want to they spread the word to their own department and anybody outside that's interested. And this tip, I saw it on my Facebook the other day. It came from a fire that happened a year ago in January of 2025. Units in Queens operated a fire in a 2-story non-fireproof mixed-use occupancy. Heavy smoke was discovered pushing from the floor moldings of the second floor. Moderate heat condition was encountered. This indicated the fire was in the floor bays between the first and second floor. There were 3 ceilings on the first floor that needed to be pulled to access the fire. They had a wood grid suspended ceiling, that like we talked about, tin ceiling, and a plaster ceiling with diamond metal mesh in it. There was heavy charring on the beams. There was extremely laborious, hazardous, all-hands fire that required special calling and additional ladder companies to consider the following points. Point number 1. Ceiling failure is one of the leading causes of firefighter death by collapse. I don't know where they got this from, but that's what FDNY says. So I assume someone researched it. And then it talks about the various types of ceilings and all the stuff to watch out for. Overexertion, heat stroke, heart attacks. Those are all conditions that will arise from these type of calls. Electrocution, possibly, and an 1.5-inch hose line. It's good for mobility, but it doesn't give you a lot of punch when everything opens up. So I just wanted to share that tip here before we go to the next one, which is the epilogue. So maybe Denis wants to read the epilogue from. This is from Rick de Groot.
Yeah. So sorry, I might have spilled a little bit of this earlier and got chastised for it. So
you didn't read the epilogue, did you? You read the NIOSH report and not my script.
No, I read the epilogue. So, but I also I do a lot of research before I get into these things. I check, newspaper articles and stuff. So in my mind, I just trying to get the whole narrative. So anyway, because we always say here that we don't really know what's in the firefighters' minds. So we see the outcomes of decisions they make, but we don't necessarily know what drove those decisions because they're all good firefighters, but sometimes they make the wrong choices and we don't know why. We really don't know why. But anyway, a little background on this. So again, this is not the fire department's fault, but the architect who was the owner and occupant of this $11 million home in 2011. So I don't know what it'd be worth today.
It's a $20 million home or more now.
Yeah, that's quite a bit, yeah. Was charged by prosecutors with the involuntary manslaughter of the firefighter Allen, whose death was a direct result of the defendant's grossly negligent decision to install outdoor fireplaces inside of his home without any safeguards in place to prevent fire or to contain fire. Let me digress for a second. Grossly negligent. That's not negligent. Negligent is where you just, and you made a mistake and there was a bad outcome. That's being negligent. Like, grossly negligent is where you knew you were making a mistake, but made it anyways. So he knew better, but decided to ignore that. So authorities searched the architect's emails and discovered that someone from the fireplace manufacturing company had warned him that the units were for outdoor use only. That would be the grossly part. Inspection records show that the architect was not planning to have any fireplaces in the house after the home was completed, and ignoring safety regulations, again about gross negligence, the defendant personally installed 4 outdoor fireplaces inside the home. I'm sorry, I was saying there was 3, there was 4. All of which, when lit, ignited the wood framing surrounded the burners. He was convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 1 year in prison. Firefighter paramedic Glenn L. Allen, who was 61 at the time, was a 36-year member of the Los Angeles City Fire Department assigned to Station 97. This wasn't his first fire. Following in the footsteps of his father, who was an LAFD engineer, in other words, engine operator, Glenn joined the department as an ambulance driver in 1974. He became a paramedic in 1976 and later cross-trained as a firefighter, so a long history of service. Allen is survived by his wife, Melanie, his daughter, Rebecca McPhee, his son-in-law, Brandon McPhee, his grandson, his mother, Alberta Holtz, and brother, Bruce Allen, and his sister, Deborah Abrams. His first grandchild was born the day after he was killed. That's tough, man.
So there's a commentary here from Rick DeGroot. Commentary. Firefighters operating below a well-involved fire in a cockloft or attic space are at risk for collapse of the finished ceiling elements should the fire affect the support system of the drywall, plaster and lath, or drop ceiling assembly. Just like the incident in Houston in the fast food restaurant where 2 firefighters died when the T-bar ceiling collapsed and the roof collapsed because of the weight of the air conditioning units and stuff on the roof. In this incident, the added water weight from the fire damaged sprinkler piping in the attic had soaked the insulation and the drywall, adding additional stress on the supporting framework of the ceiling. Firefighters should coordinate with truck company personnel operating on the roof as the fire attack progresses when the fire has entered the void space above a ceiling or the top floor of a structure. Should progress on extinguishing the fire be slowed by roof construction or other obstacles, consideration should be given to withdrawing the interior firefighters to a flanking or another protected position until the roof can properly be opened up and the fire contained from above. An FDNY firefighter died from his injuries after being hit by a collapsing plaster and glass ceiling in an apartment fire in Brooklyn, New York in 1991. An Oakland firefighter was likely killed by a ceiling collapse in a nightclub fire in 1999. A Waycross, Georgia fire lieutenant was killed in 2013 by the collapse of multiple layer plaster and lath drywall ceiling during overhaul operations after controlling a fire in an abandoned single-family dwelling. Honor the service of firefighter paramedic Glenn Allen by reviewing the dangers of various types of suspended ceiling assemblies with your crew members today. Remember our fallen brothers. Get out there and know your local.
I think that these spaces, these enclosed spaces, you need to develop a different plan perhaps for how you're going to attack fires like this. Piercing nozzle from below, Bresnan nozzle from above, maybe some other way. Once you find that the building's tougher than you planned it to be and the fire is not being contained, you need to take a step back and find another way. Like if this was the roof of a church, or like a large peaked roof with a huge open space, would you continue to try to pull the ceiling and attack it with an 1.5-inch line from below? The fire's walking away on you. You got to do a reset on your tactics and have additional tools, if you will. Another trick. Let's go to plan B. Let's go to plan C. Another trick up your sleeve that you can use that's safer. Pull everybody out from inside and soak the hell out of it from above, maybe. I don't know. Just it seems
I like
bad.
that FDNY cockloft nozzle with 2 smoothbore tips. It kind of goes up straight and then it goes into a T, and and you just shove it in the hole and turn it around a little bit, and you've got a big stream going both ways.
Keeping in mind that you're adding more water weight. And
it's still going to collapse.
If your tactic requires you to stand underneath the risk, that's probably not a good tactic.
No, you'd have to do it from above.
Yeah, so you need to find a different way.
Well, thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of the Emergency Traffic Podcast. I hope you continue to find these podcasts informative and insightful. Please give us a like, a thumbs up, and subscribe. And please tell a friend. Now, let's be safe out there.
Well done. Thanks, guys. It was a pleasure to be here with you, and hopefully we see less of this. The more this stuff gets out there, the more there's a chance that old firefighters can teach young firefighters how to become old firefighters.
Yes, I like it.
Another tragic incident. More lessons to be learned. I hope you're listening because there's lots to learn.
Yeah, we're kind of a broken record. We just keep going over all these fatalities.
Yeah. Well, we will until you stop dying.
More people are listening every day. That's the good part. So hopefully they're learning.